Hi, this is Scott Bunce, and today I'm with Andy Gole. Andy, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, yeah, happy to have you. Now, you're known as the philosopher of sales. How did you get that moniker?
Well, at least my mom knows me that way. Um, I'll tell you how I got that way, and part of what makes our selling system, urgency-based selling, unique. I started my first philosophy club in 1998, so we're 25 years into this. We're actually in the second incarnation, but we read a work of philosophy every 2 to 3 months. We get together. There's a small group of us. We wouldn't quite fill the Super Bowl, 5 or 6 of us, and we discuss. And my whole interest is not esoteric. I'm looking for ideas that I can apply, that I could bring to the table. And so my system is imbued with the ideas of classical philosophers, going back to antiquity. And that's kind of why I like the moniker, is because I'm trying to keep what I see as the great ideas alive.
I got it. Andy, selling is really important. Today's economy, you don't know what's happening with the interest rates. The CEOs and key executives I speak to, they're worried about the future. And, I can see them wanting to get the most out of the sales team. What do you do that's unique to get the sales team on point where they need to be?
Well, as a sentence or two of background, I started this whole thing in a very difficult environment. When I've started 3 small businesses and never got to more than 7 million in sales. So it's not like I'm a Fortune 500 company here. But when I started my first business, I was selling into a declining business. The demand was declining against entrenched competition with a product that was better than mine. That's how I learned how to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say, well, there are recession fears on the horizon, and some people might actually be in a declining business, this system was developed in that context. Okay. So to me, that's got to be one of the most difficult selling contexts. And, just to cut to the chase, what I did is I found value that I could give as a consultant to the prospect, to my client. And I taught them how to run their business better. When they could, they bought my product, which was packaging. That's how I started this thing. Mm-hmm. And so the consultative sell has been core since day one. A lot of people don't want to be thought of as salespeople, but not too many people would shirk at the idea of being a trusted advisor, a consultative trusted advisor. So that's core to the program, is teaching how could a salesperson be seen and be effective as a trusted advisor, as a consultant.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, just because I think so many salespeople are out there to finish a sale, but they're missing that middle piece that creates a bond. And yeah, so I'm curious, what is it that you see that salespeople are doing that is their biggest mistake, and how would you advise them going forward to build these relationships?
Well, raising it to the CEO, or including the CEO owner level, typically there's an asset that's not being maximized. We should be getting more out of our assets, more out of our salespeople. And I think the challenge is that too many people who go into sales go into it for the social side of it. They're what I call social sellers. They like people. They want to be liked. And that's an essential quality, but it ain't quite enough.
Yeah.
It also needs to be a business selling quality, an ability to kind of bring down the hammer at the right time, an ability to oscillate between mind states. So there's no tyranny of the or here, as we would read in Collins and Porras's Built to Last. It's social selling and business selling. And I think the average salesperson coming in is pretty well armed, is emotionally intelligent, and they know how to do the social piece, but not so much the business piece, which includes entrepreneurial skills. And so my finding is in working with, at this point, over 160 companies, including, many Vistage companies, is that sales team members need to be coached typically in their entrepreneurial skills, in their risk-taking skills, in bold behavior. And this requires going across or going against, in some cases, social mores. So let me give you an example. Let's say you call a prospect and the prospect says, "I'm good." What does the salesperson say? I mean, that could be 80 to 90% of all the opportunity in a given market. So one of the things we coach on is, "Gee, I'm surprised to hear you say that. That's a light challenge. I'm surprised to hear you say that." Now you got to back it up with something, ideally with what's called type 3 knowledge. So type 1 is what you know, type 2 is what you don't know, and type 3 is what you don't realize you don't know. So I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that. You don't need help with the selling? I'm surprised to hear you say that. How are your entrepreneurial skills? That would be an example potentially of type 3 knowledge. So the sales team typically needs coaching to move from more of a social order taker perspective to more of a business entrepreneurial perspective to get aligned at that level. What support is the organization offering? If that's atypical or typically the kind of person who comes in, what support is the organization offering? What kind of sales culture do they have?
Sure. So I'm really curious. How do you teach somebody to become an entrepreneurial salesperson?
With great difficulty and over time. One of the challenges I find when I'm lucky enough to be invited in by an owner or a CEO, so I have to have a conversation about how long does change take? So is it one and done? I'll write a memo. You're going to be an entrepreneurial seller from right now. Well, I think we could count on that failing 100 out of 100 times. So what do you design into a program to help people change? At the core, how does the culture and selling system generate respect and self-respect? Respect and self-respect. You'll often hear owners or CEOs say, "Oh, I want somebody who wants money." And, the trick is to have the right commission structure. Well, I think money makes it fair. If you're making a big contribution, you should be paid for it. It is my belief, based on my experience, is that people should love what they do. And in order to love what they do, ideally, the selling system and the culture should generate respect and self-respect. If I might, I'll unpack that in a few sentences. Self-respect. What's the big vision here? What's the crusade that we're on, right? The strong self-belief. We use the two-mountain metaphor. The prospect's on a lower mountain looking down, and our job is to get them to look up at the higher level of well-being to which we could bring them. The salesperson needs to believe strongly in that. That's where the self-respect comes in. I believe in what I do. Now, the respect comes in from a selling process that's strong enough so that the prospect behaves like a human being. So instead of saying, "I'm good," or "you're all the same," or "it's a commodity," what's in our selling system that's so strong that it causes the prospect to give what we call PIKs, payments in kind? So an example might be, we have such a good meeting that you introduce me to your boss. That's a payment in kind. We have such a good meeting that you come to my facility or invite me to visit your facility. That's a payment in kind. You fill out a credit application. In different businesses, the PIKs, the payments in kind, are different. I hear this over and over again. I've been doing this for over 30 years. What people love most, salespeople, about urgency-based selling, our program, is that the PIKs give them intermediate feedback. Now, of course, this is on the premise that it's not a one-call close. There are many businesses where you walk in to say hello and you walk out with a purchase order. And so there are different cues, and this idea would be applied in a different way. But for the typical B2B client we've had over the years, how do we design a system so that there's respect and self-respect? There's a big vision in which we believe. And there's a powerful selling system that's so strong, the prospect gives us PIKs. The final element is that contributes to self-image, and so it goes into self-respect, is the culture of the salesperson as a hero. Unfortunately, we live in a time and a place where there's a lot of criticism of business and salespeople. I don't know if the starting point was Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, which features an anti-hero, a slimy loser, Willie Loman, who cheats in life and commits suicide at the end. But whether or not the typical prospect has ever seen Death of a Salesman, they will have an idea that's like the offspring of Death of a Salesman, like, ew, that's like a used car salesman, you know?
Mhm.
So buyers think that way. They disparage the profession. And then what's even worse sometimes is salespeople have internalized that in their minds. So our job as part of our sales culture, and this is something that works, there may be other things that work, is to celebrate the salesperson as a hero. That's part of the self-respect. Now you might ask, why are they a hero? They're a hero because they get somebody who's looking down to look up. And another way to put that is they open the closed mind. That's what salespeople do. We open the closed mind. Now let's go back to the philosopher of sales. That's what moves civilization forward, is opening the closed mind. And that's what good salespeople do every day. And that's what we celebrate as part of our sales culture, is opening the closed mind. You probably got more than you asked. You probably want to take back your question, but
I don't.
that's the model. That's the basic model of how we move people through change. And we do it week after week, little dollops at a time, because if you go from 0 to 100, you would fry a nervous system. But every week there are bold behavior drills. What was the bold behavior that you did this week? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. A typical change program takes at least 2 to 3 months. And then it has to be reinforced afterwards, because even if you have a sales team member who's aligned with corporate strategy and culture, they're fighting habit. We have to help people break habits. So that's my answer to the question, how do we help people change?
So Andy, I love it's kind of a fresh approach to sales and the mentality of sales. Can you give an example of a company that you've worked with, and you've worked with hundreds of companies now, where they were way off track on their sales approach, and what you did to turn it around?
Absolutely. I'd be glad to. And it has kind of like a happy ending 16 years later. So here's the story. Early on, before I had even written down what we call the standard sales call, we have an 18-step process. And by the way, the whole thing is not a fit for everybody. Sometimes people want just a little piece. But there was a shift assignment I had. It shifted the whole program about 16, 17 years ago. And what they were doing is they were selling ad pages in magazines at a time where money was shifting to the internet. So for the last several years, the sales were declining. And the owner of the business, who owned 5 businesses and who ultimately brought me in, I think was attracted to the do or die element, because that's another piece of this, do or die versus best efforts. And so we did a number of things. We worked on bold behavior. They had no risk mitigation component, so we got testimonial letters. And the risk mitigation component of the program is developed substantially since then, but it was enough back then. And the other thing is we developed type 3 knowledge that was a material difference. It was a game changer. So the type 3 knowledge was how the typical customer used our magazine in doing research. We researched it, and then we featured it. That was type 3 knowledge. These were things that nobody knew, the prospect didn't know. And so in a declining market, where sales were declining 6-7% a year for the market, we had a 55% increase in 1 year. And at the same time, we raised prices on our magazine by 15%. So the sales went up about 70%. So it was a combination of bold behavior, a bold vision. So that's one of our monikers, bold vision, bold behavior. So it's bold vision, bold behavior, and then risk mitigation, because when somebody's interested, they're going to say, yeah, but will it work? Or will it, how can it harm me? What's the downside? And so the PS to the story is about 6 months ago, I got a call from one of the salespeople I trained 16 years ago. And he said, you remember me? Yeah, I remember you. And he said, well, now I'm the CEO of a company. We do 55 million in sales. And I need you to come in and teach my team the way you taught me when I was a salesman 16 years ago. So I don't know how long this assignment will continue, but we're in the 6th month. It's the most intensive program anyone has ever asked me to do. We do a kickoff call on Monday. There's one-to-one coaching with each salesperson each week. There's a seminar on Friday. And then every 2 weeks, there's a homework assignment due.
Wow,
So there's a story
that
of
sounds intense.
using the program.
That sounds like an intense program, but wow, 16 years later, what a story. Hey, Andy, I understand you've written a book, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And how do people find you, get a hold of you, and
Sure.
interact?
I've actually written 3, unfortunately. This is the one, though, I would recommend in this context. I've also written 2 books. I work with an M&A firm, and I wrote 2 books for them on how to sell your business. So I've probably worked with the ownership groups of about 250 companies that are selling their business, and I do a 2-day boot camp on how to do that. But vis-a-vis the sales team, the system is urgency-based selling, and the ideas that I've talked about here are written up in here if you just want to kind of revisit them. I have a website, urgencybasedselling.net. I have a YouTube channel with 50 or 60 webinars. I do a free webinar every week, every month, once a month. This month, the subject is selling without objections. So having no objections when you sell. And so that library is open to anyone. And if somebody actually wanted to talk to me, Andy at urgencybasedselling.net, Andy at urgencybasedselling.net. And my phone number is 201-415-3447. And I'd be thrilled to chat with people. I do Vistage talks. I'd be thrilled to talk with chairs about that. So thank you for asking me.
Yeah, Andy, it was great talking to you. I got something out of this, and I know that people watching are gonna feel the same. So thanks for sharing your time and your knowledge. And I'm wishing you the best of luck. And we'll talk soon. Okay.
I wish you the best of luck too, and thank you for this opportunity.
You bet, Andy.
Thanks.